All right, looks like we are live. Very good. Oh, and let's see. They still have not given me the Q&A box. Oh, and there's Luna. All right, so there we go. Hey, Luna.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Um, uh, I actually had the flu for I guess from Friday till yesterday. I finally started feeling better, so I'm glad it worked out that I was feeling better, so we didn't have to, cancel today or do anything crazy like that.
I saw that in your post earlier. I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah, no, me too. And then of course, once you start feeling better, then you have to get back to work and you have to catch up. And so I've been doing a whole bunch of that all day. So that video, I posted it too late. I tagged you, but I didn't put your names on the screen, so I totally messed that up. But hopefully, some people saw it, and at least people realize that I didn't fall off the face of the earth because I hadn't posted in like a week. So
Oh, hey, your health comes first. We'll be
right.
here when you get days.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so, Luna, why don't rather than me butchering your last name, why don't you pronounce it for me?
It's pronounced Laurier.
Okay, okay. I think that's probably what I would have went with, but you never know, you never know. And then
Never know. It's a tough one.
we'll have Corvin joining us here soon, hopefully. I haven't seen him pop in yet, but that's gonna be fun when we get both of you. But while we wait for him, why don't you tell us about your newest release of Shadow and Moonlight?
I have it right here. So, Shadow and Moonlight, the tagline is a woman fated to pass young, a man cursed to live forever, and a darkness that threatens to destroy everything they love. And it follows the main character, Cassie, who has struggled with a terminal illness her entire life. And at the beginning of the book, she is basically left with a few years left to live. Um, and she has kind of lived her entire life sheltered, like with this illness hindering
Mhm.
her life. And so she basically is left with these two choices of just continuing to live her life sheltered or going out and trying to live what life she has left to the fullest. And at this time, she meets a guy named Damien, and she gets pulled into this hidden world where there is a war that's been raging in the shadows of our world for centuries between gods and vampires and monsters. And she learns about the hidden magics in our world as well as magic hidden in her as well. And she has to do all of this while keeping the secret of her condition that she has maintained her entire life under treated as anyone else and not be known for her illness.
Right. Wow, that's a great premise. You definitely usually whenever you have books that revolve around like a terminal illness or anything serious, it's more like a John Green type of a novel. So to see that incorporated and be a major point in a fantasy type novel like this is really very cool. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up because you've been posting about it is you've been having some issues with, I guess, especially your hardcover. And, for, Blue Handle, I do some of the uploading and all that stuff. So I feel your pain, but how's that going? Is it getting resolved? Are you getting anything back from Ingram's customer service department?
So it has been honestly a nightmare. Like it was honestly my worst fear. I was so nervous about it leading up that there was going to be issues at release, and of course, all of the worst nightmares come to life. And the situation with Barnes and Noble is still in the process of getting resolved. They managed to push through a lot of the pre-orders, and that's like I think we only lost a few of the pre-orders, thankfully. But now that the book is out, now we're having issues with my print and distribution company. I call them my publisher, but they're technically not a publisher, but it's Ingram Spark.
Right.
And
Mhm.
they encountered an issue during processing with my hardcovers where they're trying to say there is an issue where the ink saturation is causing the paper to curl.
Hmm.
And the issue that I'm encountering is I've ordered, like, you see all these proofs were ordered, and y'all never said anything. Like, I have not touched this
Right.
book for weeks before release, and you never gave me these issues. And then a week before release, suddenly there's an issue, but they don't respond to me to try and fix it. And it's been 3 weeks. I initially reached out to them, and like the regular tier customer service has been responsive, but they can't help me. So they're like, we escalated it to like the next level
Yeah.
of service, but not once has that higher up customer service reached out. And I followed up like several times, and there's no phone support. It's all email correspondence.
Yeah.
And saying they're like, I'm sorry, you're having a horrible experience. Like, they are working on it. They will get back to you. And I'm like, it's been 3 weeks now. I literally emailed them yesterday. I'm like, it's been 3 weeks and it's still crickets. And now I'm getting word that some of my readers or hardback orders from Books a Million is canceling because the book is not available. And it's it's been a headache. I went through and I actually reformatted my book because I've learned new things. I did my own
Hmm.
formatting and I've improved it. So there's like some things that I wanted to like improve, and it was going to be like my second edition, but I wasn't planning on doing that. Like, I was planning on doing that later, but I'm like, I might as well go ahead and make adjustments, try and lower the saturation of, because there's
Hmm.
illustrations throughout my book, which I think that's the primary reason why I'm having issues is I have illustrated scenes in my book. So of course
Oh, okay.
black ink and such, like especially like on the prologue, there's a lot of black
Oh.
ink. So maybe if I like bring the saturation of it down, and so I did all that and I re-uploaded that. I'm hoping that it'll get fixed. It's just it's been tiring. Of course.
And then,
Hey,
yeah, we
how's it
got
going?
Corvin with us now.
How's it going, guys?
It's going well. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was kind of scrambling for a second, but we got there.
All
Oh
right.
It's okay.
And now that we have everybody and we have a lot more people coming in, I'll let everyone know. You should get a message that tells you what it is we're doing. Book Talk on Book Talk. We're talking about books, and we have an author and a narrator, which we do a lot. And we'll talk about books and writing, and we may talk about anything else. But they're here with us. We have Tanya, who is Celtic Blue to you. She's down in the comments. She's moderating, and she'll be interacting with you guys while we're all talking together. And if you tap on the screen, that's a like, and the more of those we get, the more people are gonna see us and get views. So we love that. If you there's a little arrow at the bottom, and you can share with your friends. And if you like what we're talking about, maybe they'll like it too. So anyway, got all that out of the way. And I know Luna was talking to us about the publishing issue she was having, and it's especially bad for you, I think, because you have so many people who pre-ordered and who are ordering, and luckily you're on KU also, and you've had, like, I don't know, I think your last video said getting close to 70,000 page reads, so you have a huge fan base, and so for them to mess up the hardcover with all those beautiful illustrations, I cannot imagine how heartbreaking that must be. And, for the fans who are reaching out to you, that's got to be tough.
It's been very, very stressful. I mean, and it's been honestly, it's been a little disheartening because like we were set up to have like a really, really good release. The book sold out on Amazon before midnight the night before. And so come release day, because I'm having issues with it, and then Amazon dropped the ball. The book was released, but you couldn't buy it anywhere. If you can't buy it, the sales ranks don't go anywhere. And so it's
Yeah.
fairly, because thankfully I had Kindle Unlimited. We actually broke 100,000 page yesterday,
All
which,
right. Hey.
but it like honestly, like it's really disheartening because at this point I don't know how many book sales we missed out on because people wanted to purchase it and they couldn't. And now the hype is dying down because now we're post release and it's not like as big of a thing. And it's just, I'm just focusing on book two at this point.
Yeah. Well, and also I believe one of the reasons we have Corvin on with you is I believe he's going to be narrating the book. Is that right?
Yes, he is one of my two. I have him and Nicole James.
And is it more like a stage production where they're both they're doing the male and the female voices and all that stuff?
Yes, it is. It is not a duel. It is a duet where Nicole will be because the book one is first person point of view from the main character's point of view. So Nicole will be narrating the story and voicing all of the female characters, and Corvin will be voicing all of the male characters. And then in book two, we're gonna get a dual POV, so we'll get that switch back and forth where Nicole and Corvin will be narrating, but we'll still have all of the male and female voices will still be narrated by them individually so that you always have the same voice for the character. It never changes.
So Corvin, talk to me about how doing it that way differs from whenever you have a solo project and it's all you whenever you're narrating.
So that's a really good question. So it's cool. There's a lot more coordination, for one. In this case, we're going to be doing some directed sessions with our illustrious author slash director. And so we're going to be sitting in there together. And so, when Nicole's like laying on the talent, she's going to make sure that I'm meshed with her. And so that's really cool. The other thing is I don't have to save as much of my range for my female characters, because I don't have any of them. I'm doing a different production right now, for example, and I get to be a flamboyant Hispanic male prostitute. And so I get to use a lot of my female, like, femme range to be that character, where I get to be like, girl, there's no way you're going to survive that engagement, and like, so um, it's great. I love that. I love having the full width of my voice back, um, and the post production is a lot more intense though because we're making her space sound or my space sound like her space, whichever, and so we're meshing that, but we're also meshing volumes and delivery and so yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it, but you get to hand off some of the characters, so that's kind of cool. And there's also this sensation of I can't wait to see what she does with this part, because like, because there's always the who the hell are you, versus the who the hell are you,
Mm-hmm.
like. And so depending on how she comes in, that's going to change how I come in, and that honestly changes the story a little bit. So it's more exciting for me.
I'm so excited.
And and who's going to be doing the engineering? Who's going to be splicing all that stuff together?
Um, we have a pro engineer that we're reaching out to that does really good work, and we've listened to their samples, and so they're going to be doing all of our leveling and editing and that kind of thing.
Nice. And Luna, that must be one of the differences. And bear with me for a second. I'll get there. I promise. One of the big differences between writing a novel and screenwriting, which I've been delving into a little bit, is in the novel you do everything. You are the director, and in screenwriting, it's mostly dialogue and just real. You can't envision the whole world because you're going to eventually hand it off to a director. And for you, Luna, you are actually in this case getting to be a director. You are directing how everything goes. So, what is that like directing that sort of stage play that is going to be your audiobook versus what you did when you were just sitting at the computer and dreaming all of this stuff up?
I'm actually really excited about it because I have a background in theater. So
Okay.
like I've got some experience in directing and screenwriting and things like that. So it's really cool because I mean, I'm a very visual person. I'm one of those crazy readers that when I'm reading a book, there's images, there's a movie playing in
Oh
my
yeah,
head.
me too.
Book, of course, like majority of the characters, I hear how they talk, I hear how they say things. So I'm really excited to not only watch them record to be like, hey, Corvin, when you deliver this line, can you put maybe a little bit more edge to it, or be a little bit more like short with that, just to so that like we really get a feel of just how that character, their personality through in the way that they speak.
Yeah, like I would have loved to have been able to do that with my. I have one audiobook out there, and it was a first time narrator, which is fine, but it was done through like there was an audiobook company that specializes in it, and like they gave me directions like don't do accents and this kind of thing and that kind of thing, and I didn't get to listen to any of it before it went out. You know, it's definitely a very different world working through a publisher who has all those rights. And if you get to be involved, great. And if you don't, whatever, versus what you're going to do, which is you are fully immersed in the whole process. And, you know, that is definitely one advantage to, you know, indie publishing. Of course, the disadvantage is the stuff you're having with your print, because, you know, with bigger publishers, they have like people who like have the Ingram like account and they can like you know be one on one all day and they're in the same city probably. So you know it's there's so many pros and cons to traditional publishing versus indie publishing, and what you're doing with your audiobook is definitely one of the pros because that audiobook is going to be exactly what you had in mind. Oh, all right. I like getting those gifts and those crowns. That's really cool. Well, thank you so
Marty.
much. I could not read who that
Marty.
was, but thanks for the crowns. Those are great. Um, so I hear that you know, you talked about book two. How are you juggling working on book two while simultaneously trying to produce this audiobook and obviously dealing with all of the stuff that comes with just having a book out there, all the marketing, all the customer service, and all that stuff?
I look like I've got it, but my a dumpster fire. No, I actually started writing book two whenever I sent book one to my editor earlier this year, back in May, and I finished it last month. It's with my editor right now.
Oh,
So
good.
like off to the side, I like take a moment to just focus on what's going on with book one. I started three, and that's what I want to be focusing my time and energy on. But I'm kind of like, I got the first chapter started, so like set it aside, focus on figure one. I'm just glad that I finished uh finished book two before release, because I could not have imagined trying to juggle that and the issue that I'm having and trying to market that and working on production. Nope.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely did it the smart way. You know, whenever I talk to other authors and they're asking about advice, they're like, you know, I just, you know, sent in, you know, my book to, you know, my editor or, you know, publisher, whoever, you know, what should I do now? And I say, celebrate for a day or two and then start writing the next thing because, especially like, you know, if you're working under contract, which I've done a couple times, you know, the pace at which you have to try to get that second book out there is kind of insane, especially if you've had your whole life to write book one and then you've got 6 to 8 months to turn in book two.
Yeah.
It's you know it's a very different world that you're living in, and some people are good at it, some people aren't. I don't know if I was or not because I tried to write the only sequel I've written so far during the pandemic, and so I had the time, but the headspace wasn't there, and so I'm looking forward to like rebooting like that whole thing. You know, I'm really glad for you that you book two is already in with your editor, and you're not having to deal with that on top of all the rest. Corvin, I watched your videos, and I believe I have this right. Did you not just have one of your latest books that you narrated get released?
I believe so. So I had a book by Emily Blackwood called House of Lies and Sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That one is really, really good. I did that with the incredibly talented Ali Shea, um, and who's a wonderful friend as well. And so I did that one. Let's see. I just turned in book two, which has been approved and will be released by Audible in the next couple days, I believe. But I'm not going to speak to the official release date since I'm not the author. But I imagine it's going to be going through in the next little bit. But yeah, so that's Prince of Sins and Shadow, and that one's really good. Also with Allie, of course. I love that one. And Let's see. I am finishing up Sinners and Saints tonight, actually. Um, so that'll be fun. That will be, released relatively shortly as well. And then I will be starting her book after Christmas. And the next book I'm putting the sound waves on is going to be Spiteful Punks. So yeah, I'll be doing that between now and Christmas.
Wow, you are prolific, my friend. Do you get most of your work through ACX, or is it a lot of networking? Like, how are you getting all these books
Um,
coming at you?
Almost none. So almost none of it through ACX. That's how I started. And then I came on TikTok, and I don't know what happened. Cece Monroe, who's a wonderful person and a excellent author, brought me on, and she's like, Corvin, you got to get on TikTok. And then she told everybody, she was like, this is my Corvin. I approve of him. And then I guess, yeah, I narrated for some people just to let authors kind of hear their characters come to life. And then all of a sudden, like people like Callista
Yeah, so
slid into my DMs and were like, yo, Corvin. I was like, what? So that's what I've been doing. Typically, it's I interact with somebody or they hear me on the live or something and they go, yo, you want to do like a really freaking sick book?
Yeah,
And
because
that's how I get it.
I found you through here.
You found me through what?
That's how I found you. I found you through books and beer on a live.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Jen's in here too. Jen's in here. She's the founder of Books and Beer, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. And so I've met a lot of brilliant authors that way. Rexy contributes to Books and Beer as well. And I told Luna that I would fight a badger in a cardboard box for the chance to narrate her book. And I'm waiting for the badger to show up, but she's giving me a shot at it.
Yeah, be careful of your book mail, right? No,
Yeah, no
uh,
kidding.
that's
Cool.
one thing that I've really been gathering, as I've been interacting more and networking more here on TikTok, is that it is really great for the narrators, which is awesome because the medium allows for it so much more because there's the lives and then there's your normal videos like and book talk in general and for us writers and readers, I think it's the best social network for books in general. But for you guys, I love that it's easy for you to jump on a live or to record something with the author's approval and show your work, without having to go through all the hoops of the ACX or trying to talk to audiobook publishers who specialize in that, like a Blackstone Audio or something like that. And so like that's really great, and some of the most fun lives that I see, because I specialize, my algorithm shows me all the book stuff, are whenever when a voice actor is narrating a book. And I love that it's not all, you don't do a whole scene in one take, you stop it and go, nope, I can do that, and all those things, and it just shows what all goes into what you do. And so most of us who are writers kind of, we know what goes on, but it's all in our heads. So we can't, I suppose people do, but jumping on a live and just watching me type and then do this and go like that and go, I mean, it's not nearly as fun. So I love watching you guys do your narrator thing. And I'm really glad that for you, it has given you as much, work as you can get. So that's great. What was it about Luna's book that made you want to fight a badger to be able to narrate it?
So, there are books that make you feel things that almost like make you feel like a kid again, like where you're sucked in and you don't feel like you're completely in control of your emotions anymore. Like you're a little bit at the mercy of the author. And her book did that, but it also awakened a sense of adventure in me. It's really easy to feel like there's less magic in the world as you get older, especially with everything that's gone on in the last few years. And then, hey, what's up, hot girls? Um, uh, but Luna's book made me feel like there was a little more.
Oh, I love that. And so did so Luna, how did Corvin get your book to get sampled? Did you send out arcs? Did you just kind of do an open call for narrators? How did you guys connect like that?
So it was purely fate. This is actually my first run-in with Jen and Rexy and Angie. I was already friends with Rexy and Angie. I hadn't yet met Jen, but I was chilling out one evening and my friend Angie sends me this invite to a live and I hop in like in the comments, and I barely get into the live and they send me an invite and I'm like, "Oh, okay. All right. I've not live before. All right, sure, why not?" Hop full panel and they're all talking and they're like, "Luna, come in." And so I get in and they're like, "So tell us about your book." And Corvin's there, and Rexy and Angie and Jen are there, and Jen's all like covering herself with her hoodie and all that. And we start talking about the book, and then Corvin is like, "Hey, if you want to send me an excerpt, I'll read it on the live." And me, zero preparation. I had no clue this was happening. I was like, why don't you figure it out? And so I did. I sent him an excerpt. He read it. And everyone in the comments, everyone in the live, Jen's like hiding, like closing the hoodie around herself because she's blushing. And it was just hilarious. I think it was in that moment, just watching their reactions, I was like, first off, perfect, like perfect voice for Damien. But I also think if I went anywhere else, Rexy, Angie, and Jen would find me.
Uh,
I could hire anyone else. But I knew at the time that I was like, I love whenever females narrate books and they do the male voice, but it's like totally different when you have like an actual guy read the male voices and a woman read the female voices. It's just next level, and I wanted that like full experience. So that was that was how this happened.
Excellent. And Corbin, you've kind of joked on your videos a little bit about how most of what you do, I think it's even in your bio, most of what you do is say "I growled," under
Yeah.
the dialogue tags. Did you listen to a lot of romance audiobooks, or like how did you develop that voice whenever you're doing those types of audiobooks?
So that's another really good question. So I actually didn't. Um, I my style is very different from a lot of other people, and I found that my voice, like, I couldn't do that like clinical sound that all the other male narrators had. Like that wasn't really my jam. And so
Ooh, that's
I was
nice.
like, well, I'm not going to be able to sound that way naturally. And so I was doing a book under a different name, under my real name, and they sent this author who I didn't know who it was sent me a an audition request. She was like, "Hey, I'd like you to read for my book." I was like, uh, "Sure." And so I did the audition, but it was for this like werewolf prince, right? Son of the Supreme Shifter, Supreme Alpha, or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what that guy sounds like. So I like took some Chris Hemsworth, that like you're you and I'm me, and we're always going to be different, but we could be better. Like something like a little bit like that, whatever. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then I took a little bit of like the sound from Evermore for Beauty and the Beast, where the new one where he's like, I was the one who had it all. And he has that like princely
Oh,
resonance.
nice.
And I combined them. And so you end up with this character who's like, Sierra, where are you going? Like this kind of like resonant, growly character. And then when, I was like, well, he's a werewolf. So when he growls, like, he'd be like, touch her and die. Like you had like a little bit of like actual texture. And so I was like, okay, cool. I did that, that voice. And I was like, well, I need a sample for ACX, I guess. So I made it a sample. Went on my merry way. My wife asked me about the book, and she was like, "Oh no, I've heard of that one." I was like, "Wait, what?" So I go and look it up, and it's a bestseller. And I was like, "Oh wow, I'm kind of glad I didn't know that before I auditioned for it."
Yeah.
But yeah, that's And since then, I kind of did some derivation of, like, not that voice, but that idea. Like, what makes
Hmm.
a voice attractive? And, you create a character, um, and I'll pull from here and pull from there, and create characters.
And see, that's such a different kind of imagination than sort of the one I have, because I did have my narrator for my debut Deep Background. He asked me like, "What do your characters sound like when they're going?" And I thought about it, and I can see whenever I'm writing, I see what's happening, and when I hear the voices, the, they're not super distinct except for maybe accents and stuff like that. But I didn't have an answer for them. I just said, wow, that's something that isn't a part of my process. When I think about voice, I'm thinking about the words on the page and not necessarily how they're sounding. Even if I'm writing somebody with a deep Southern accent, they just basically sound in my head like me doing, like a deep Southern accent or whatever. It's not like an actor of some kind or anything like that, or at least it's not whenever I'm reading it. Now, whenever I'm actually writing, like who knows, but that stuff's gone. But whenever I'm like rereading or whenever I'm revising, I actually don't hear very distinct voices, and it doesn't come alive uh, audit auditorily like it does visually for me. Um, Now, Luna, it sounds like maybe that's not the case for you, since you definitely know what your characters want to sound like. It sounds like you have a very clear vision of what each one of your characters sound like.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, like there are some characters that are like generalized. Like I giggle because I've been filling out like the notes on each character in the program for him and Nicole, and like most of them have like pretty specific like matches their personality. Each of their personalities are very well fleshed out, and it reflects in their dialogue and how they speak. But there are of course a couple characters where I'm like generic male voice.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty simple. Like there's nothing super special or like unique about it. But then we have some characters like James, who is Scottish, and I wrote his dialogue and another character's dialogue in kind of Scots. So Corvin actually was working on programs to work on a Scottish accent, and then the main character Damien, he has kind of a washed down, subtle Greek accent. So that was something else that Corvin worked on. He worked on developing and then toning down a subtle Greek accent so you can kind of hear like the slight lull of it in the way that he talks.
Yeah.
So this question is all right. So first, give us your Scottish accent there, Corbin. We have some people out in the
Not
comments who are
not
asking
yet.
for it.
Not
Not
yet.
yet, not yet. Okay,
I nope. I
all
not
right.
until I officially meet with my coach. When I meet with my coach and he signs off on me, that's when I'll do the Scottish accent. But I was working on it before this live. So
All right.
soon. I
Giving us something to look forward to. You make it a big. You don't really have cover reveals. You can do an accent reveal. I
accent
like
reveals.
that. I
Um
like that.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That one, I will say I can tell you a little bit about the process if you want.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome.
So I go through, I look at this program, and it's got, vowel changes for each of your vowels, and then consonant changes, and then your diphthongs, and then it'll go into your musicality and your rhythm and how you stress syllables, and then it'll also go into placement, where you like talk about your tongue pulling back, like back in there, and then like your placement forward in your mouth. So you've got a dual placement, but you're also placing it kind of high in your mouth, and you're lowering your jaw, and you're like imagining like a bullfrog kind of coming out like that, opening your throat, lifting your soft palate. So Scottish is actually one of the harder accents that I've come across, like harder than Castilian. It's more complex. That's what I'll say. Um, and that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I'm gonna do it right, and when it's right, then I'll reveal it. But yeah, there's plenty of work, and you go through, and once you've got all that down, you build it until you can exaggerate, like the glottal stops and everything like that.
Hmm.
You build all of that, and then once you can exaggerate it very accurately, you start toning it back down, and then you spend hours listening to native speakers
Mm-hmm.
And then you start working on your monologue, and you'll have a monologue, like your like Northern Scottish or a Northern Irish accent, where he's like I appreciate you coming forward and bringing this to my attention, but I think you just want to be a good person again. Like you've got,
Love it.
yeah, and so you'll do that, and it teaches you to express in the accent. Um, and then at that point, I start reading in the accent. And then it's ready to show somebody. But uh, I hesitate to do it early because like a Scotsman they're not a caricature of a Scotsman.
Mm-hmm.
They're a person. Until I know it sounds like a person, not an imitation of an idea, then I'm like, ooh.
That's so great to hear you go into how much craft is going into just nailing one of dozens of accents you'll probably be asked to do. Because I know as writers, we do that same work, in different ways in making our characters 3D and making them people and making them not caricatures. Because a lot of people who aren't from Texas or from the South, I've read books where they have a character that's from that area, and it's just absolutely, as somebody who's from that area, just brutal to read. Like, this person did no work. They did not even try to figure out what people are actually like in this area. They watched a few westerns and said, there you go. And I love that, whenever we're working on our characters, you're doing the same thing, even though you're not coming up with the specific characters. You know that your voice has to accurately reflect, whatever character you're going to try to inhabit. And so I love listening to other people talk about their craft because, writers, you get, two or three just writers in the room, and that's, we'll talk all that stuff to death. Um, so, Luna, I did want to ask you, was there a specific audiobook or a collection of audiobooks that you listened to that made you want to do it the way you're doing, making it more like a play with different characters, different voice actors using different characters instead of just the traditional one person doing the whole thing?
So yes, but not in the way that you're thinking. And it would be the From Blood and Ash audiobooks. And whenever the War of Two Queens audiobook comes in, it becomes a dual POV, and it's done in a duel instead of the duet. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have Poppy's point of view, where the female narrator is not only narrating and voicing the females, but she's also voicing the males, which when you're listening to all the audiobooks, you're used to that voice for that character. But then you have the male point of view come in, and he's voicing the female characters in him, and it's a completely different voice. And I'm like, this is throwing me off really bad. I don't want to do it like this. I want to have it to where like you always have the same voice for each character, regardless of whose point of view it is. So that was honestly like one of the biggest influences for me on why I wanted it duet instead of dual POV or recording, narrating.
One of the best audiobooks I ever heard that had, and it wasn't just duet; it was a whole cast. Was Lincoln in the Bardo, which won the Booker Prize. George Saunders, and it was an actual, basically, stage play with like Hollywood actors and stuff like that. So I know they were able to throw a ton of money at it and all that stuff. But that was the first time I'd heard an audiobook where it wasn't just one narrator. And I listened to that and went, "Oh goodness, that is one of the coolest experiences." And so, I love that if you have the ability and want to do that. I mean, I think that is one of the best ways that you can do an audiobook, because the vocal range is so very different. And I don't listen to audiobooks nearly as much as I used to, but yeah, you can definitely have a narrator who's really good at certain parts, but just overall, the experience is not quite what you would want it to be. Oh, thank you so much for the hearts. We love those. Um, all right. So
Maybe.
so anyway, sorry, I'm like a squirrel, over there whenever something pops up. But no, I think that's great, and I think that more books should be done that way. For the indie authors, if they can do it. But also, I'm surprised there aren't more of the bigger books that are done that way. And obviously, you have to pay two people. You probably have to pay a higher engineer. But if you're going to do an audiobook, do it right. Like, I would rather, if I look back at my audiobook that was done, and has nothing to do with the narrator or anything like that. It's just if I had, if I had to do it over, I would definitely have done a lot more of that kind of stuff, or just not have one and just say, well, we couldn't make it work, guys. But I'd rather put out something that was as dynamic as that versus the other, because it's a different product, right? It's, you have your book and then you have your audiobook. They are two separate things. Like when people talk about bad adaptations of movies, I try to look at them as two separate pieces of art that are interconnected. But an audiobook's a little different because it is the words are the same, right? So I can see there's a little more of an attachment, to an audiobook. Whereas if somebody, and I would love it if they were to adapt, one of my novels into a film or a TV series. I think I would be able to, take a little bit more of a step back and say, they paid me hopefully gobs of money, and so they get to now do what they want with it, and my book is still here. That's still mine. That is still 100%, my product. But the movie and the TV series, it's under somebody else's creative control. I did want to ask both of you, and you can pick who goes first. What was you have a moment that you can go back to that made you think, I want to do this and I am passionate about it? Because there are a lot of people who want to be a writer, but to achieve the level of success that both of you have done, and in not a whole lot of time, it doesn't seem like. You're obviously very passionate about what you do. Is there a moment you can think back to where you said, this is the thing that I am going to pour my heart into? And Corvin, why don't you go? Yeah.
I guess for me, it's two moments. The moment I fell in love with acting, I was in high school and I was in drama class, and I had a phenomenal teacher that was a Broadway actor. And I remember when it was my turn, all the teachers in the school would like leave their classrooms and fill in the classroom, which is probably should have been a hint. Um, but and I would just go, as hard as I could. And for me, it felt like free falling, like when you go skydiving, because you're just like letting everything go and you are someone else. And I was doing that, and I did this scene. I think it was like from Wuthering Heights, and I got up, and everyone was like blinking back to reality, and there were like tears coming down people's faces, and I realized that I had just brought everyone with me, and they were seeing what I was seeing and feeling what I was feeling, and I had given them something that they couldn't have created for themselves. It was a gift I could give somebody, and it felt like handmade. And so that was the moment I fell in love with acting. And then I think the moment I fell in love with narration, I was starting to really enjoy it with my first couple books. And then I went, and it was after I landed that book series, with as the like werewolf guy. And I remember I was walking my dog, and I looked up, and the moon was hanging heavy and orange on the horizon, like this beautiful hunter's moon. And I thought to myself, unironically, oh my God, it's a good night to be a wolf. And I was like, because I was about to walk back inside and record. And I was just like, oh, what a night to be a wolf. And it felt incredible. And that was the moment I fell in love with this. I just got done being the Prince of Shadows, Malachi. Like just got done being that guy. And so it's incredible, because if there is a story, you don't have to worry about if you got an interesting character. You got all of them. Maybe you're splitting it with somebody else, but I mean, if you're in an audiobook cast, you've got good characters. And that was the moment I fell in love. And I was like, I'm gonna do this till I die.
That is a great story. That whenever I asked that question, I couldn't have come up with anything better. That's great. So yeah, follow that, Luna. Go ahead, give it a
Uh,
shot.
Not that deep for sure. I also, back to my high school roots, I was in theater, I was in poetry club, pretty much anything creative I was involved in. But something that I always really stuck to was I was an avid reader. And I always loved storytelling. I loved engaging in like the different, like getting into the minds of characters and inciting that emotion and that feeling. And that was kind of where the dream started and where I knew like I gave up on it initially back in high school because there was no support for indie authors back then. It was you either went trad or your book never really saw the light of day. So I let that little voice in my head win, and I stopped writing the book at chapter 25 and it sat on a disc. But that was a long time dream of mine, and so whenever I stumbled upon it back in January of this year, and I found BookTalk, and there was this much bigger support for indie authors, that was kind of like, this is actually possible now. Like I could do this, and reading all the news stories that I had missed out on, I was able to like reconnect with that and get back on a level. And then I read the book for old time's sake, and I was like, oh, I could do better than this. I could do better than that. We could write, right, what if this happened? And so that's kind of where it all stemmed, and seeing the emotion that a lot of stories were bringing to people and making them feel. And I was like, I want to make people feel that. I want to make people feel that. And that's kind of where I knew that I wanted to be a storyteller, whether it was writing books or screenwriting for plays or movies. That was something that I wanted to try and get into and do.
And that's very similar to for me. I wanted to write fiction the way that almost any journalist. I was a reporter and then an editor for a long time, and so this was back whenever I was a reporter, and we all dream of writing fiction, right? And so, but I was working as a sports writer for the local paper here in Amarillo, and I've been in kind of a reading slump, and really I was kind of in a slump in general. I was like 25 and like past college, and just after a few years of working the same job, a little bit of that ennui, and but that was right when Amazon started doing its Prime Reads program. So not KU, but back if you had Amazon Prime, which I did. They allowed you to the one free or two free books a month or whatever it was back then. And so they just sent me an email saying, "Hey, free books," and I was like, "Free books, that works." So I downloaded the Kindle app, and one of them, both of them had an impact, but the one that really had an impact on me was My Sister's Grave by Robert Dugoni, who I've since met, and I can call him Bob, and he's a wonderful human being. But his book, it was the first I'd read in a long time, and it was like a literary thriller, so written beautifully, but also a police procedural that had a couple of really amazing twists that were not twists for twist's sake, and they were one of those where if you could have connected the dots and you had that moment of, oh my goodness, that's what's been happening this whole time, and it really really moved me, and I love that book, and I was like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to make other people feel what I just felt, and very much in that craft sense of it, right? Because I mean, I was writing daily, and I was writing sometimes more daily than I wanted to, and I was getting paid for. So like I was getting that writing fix, but I wasn't getting that feeling that I was really impacting people, and that I was making them feel that those feelings that fiction was doing. And so yeah, I decided, okay, I'm going to see if I can do this thing. And so I deconstructed that book and a couple others that I really enjoyed. And so, tried learning the craft, and, I picked up craft books along the way. But like, that is what drove me to want to write fiction was, I enjoyed that feeling so much. And it had been so long, because like I said, I was in a real bad reading slump, that I was like, that is, if I can do that, that is really what I want to do. Let's see. So we have Ray down there in the comments. Let me see. So he's talking about Divided States. My latest release, and that was more of an action thriller. And so he's talking about the way I formatted my chapters, and I did three points of view, and each chapter is one of their points of view, and then they all kind of intersect like that. And when it comes to structure, and we can talk about that, Luna, the structure of your book. I like to play around with POV and structure, and let the guilty pay if whenever I explain how that book is written, it's a dumpster fire, because it's first person narration for a present timeline. There's a past timeline with a rotation of three different third person points of view, and then there's also excerpts from a fake book within a book that are sprinkled in there too. So it sounds like it should just be off the wall nuts, but it's actually the one that's been the most critically acclaimed. So thank you, Ray, for complimenting me on my structure. Luna, you've talked about how book 2 is going to be dual POV. So what made you want to change to that from how you had written this first book?
So the way that the world building is done, a lot of times I hear from readers, one of the big things is that a lot of authors will info dump world building. Like at the beginning, you've got to trudge through 15, 20 pages of world building. Whereas in A Shadow on Moonlight, and I did it very intentionally, the first book being only from Cassie's point of view, and that was so that we learned of the world is built through her eyes and as she's learning it. So instead of it all being at once, it's like sprinkled in as the story progresses, and you really get to like experience learning all of this through her eyes and through her experiences. And then I wanted to bring in, because in book 2 the world building really ramps up, and like we get to see a little sprinkle of the secret world in book 1, but in book 2 we really dive into just what is going on in the shadows of our world. And I wanted to not only bring in Cassie's point of view with the turmoil that she's going through, but also see what's going on in the background from Damien's point of view and his own turmoil, because Damien has secrets and he knows things, but Cassie also has her own secrets, and so we get to kind of like get into their minds as they're trying to like navigate all of this and not tear each other down with all the things that they themselves are just holding on their shoulders. So that was kind of the reason. It was very intentional that book 1 was only from a first person point of view, and that was because I didn't want all of Damien's secrets to come out until just the right time, which is when
Mm-hmm.
book.
Yeah, and so that's always the trick, when it comes to which POV, and it's not necessarily first person versus third person, because in my opinion, if you're writing in a deep enough third person, then it just comes down to do you want them to be I, or do you want them to use the person's name? I've been leaning more toward first person lately. I really enjoyed, because there you have no choice but to feel everything that character's feeling. But whenever the world does expand, like I was talking about the Divided States, that's a conspiracy thriller, and with a big conspiracy, you just have to show more angles, and so I don't want to have 3 different first person, because that can get confusing. Although hopefully each character's voice is different enough that people could differentiate, and plus you have the labels at the top. One question I want to ask, because I know Luna, you have to leave here pretty soon. Whenever between you and Corvin, are you, since you're doing a duet and you're doing a little more like a stage play, are you keeping in a lot of the dialogue tags, or because they're going to be different voices for sure, are you taking those out whenever they're having conversations, or is that something you're still thinking about or haven't thought
That's something we haven't discussed actually, though I'm kind of thinking it feels redundant to do the dialogue tags when we can clearly see who spoke,
about?
unless specifically saying who spoke. If it's just he said or he grunted or he muttered, like I feel like those could come out. Like I feel like those are a little redundant. Um, but if it's like a specific character and we can't tell who the character is, I feel like, you know what, maybe we need to clarify who the character is that's speaking just to be safe and sure. But given that like we have 2 different narrators and then like the characters each have their own unique style, we might not need as much dialogue tags. But this is something that I've like I said, I've yet to fully discuss with Corvin and Nicole. But yeah.
So, the only thing you'd have to be careful of is whisper sync is important to some people, where the
Mm-hmm.
audio is synced to where they've read in the book, so they can jump back and forth between formats. And so you have to make sure that you don't trip up the whisper sync. So I'd have to look into that. There's a threshold at which point it's fine, because books are made with mistakes all the time. But if you've got like a chapter and it's just the two of them, and so you get rid of all the he said she said. I don't know if that's enough combined to, but yeah, I believe it's something along the lines of like a 90 or 95% similarity with the text. Whisper sync will still work, so in that case we're fine.
I keep telling Corvin and Nicole, I'm like, I'm new to this. Y'all tell me what works best. Like, guide me. So it's pretty much the majority of our conversation.
And yeah, that's like me, author. I would have never ever thought about that in a million years. So sorry if I just threw a big wrench into what y'all were doing. That's my bad.
No,
But that's just something that I think about because like obviously the closest thing I have would be like movies and stuff like there are no dialogue types because you can see and you can hear, and so what you're doing would be similar. But I had no idea that's how Whisper Sync worked, and I've never because I only have the one book and I don't love talking about the audiobook. So yeah, I hadn't ever even thought about something like that. So that's why it's good to have experience. I suppose an experienced narrator who knows about those things, working. So obviously, Luna, you have a really big following here on TikTok, and you talked about the how embracing that community has been. What sort of tricks do you have maybe for the people in the audience who are writers and who want to know more about marketing books because that's something nobody has completely mastered. But obviously, you've hit on something. Do you have any advice for some of those folks out there?
um, I would say first and foremost, of course, like hint at what you're working at, share it with people, but building a relationship with your following first and foremost. Connect with those who have similar interests. I started TikTok back in January, and I did hint that I was working on a project, and I shared some teasers with like what it was about or like the tropes and things to expect. But majority of my content was connecting with other authors through humor and things that we encounter as authors and writers, and then connecting with readers with funny things that we encounter as readers, like thoughts that go through our head to like audios and such like that. And then later on, I used to cosplay back in high school, and I started just seeing all these people doing bookish cosplay, and I was like, I really miss cosplay. I want to do that. So I started cosplaying, and that of course brought in a whole new demographic of people who were really into that. And so that was like the biggest thing, was that I just kind of like I connected with readers with similar interests and things, built those relationships, and then the book kind of came through. People were like, I love her cosplay. She's funny, she's entertaining. Like and it gets them more interested in what I actually have, like my story and such. And they're I hinted a little bit of story with my cosplay because I don't just like dress up and do like music and stuff. No hate to those, like I love them, but I actually like took my character and I made her own fan. Like I'm at some point in my lifetime, I'm going to make a fanfic for a story, which is a daughter of Cassian and Nesta from the Akatar series. But like, it kind of gave people a hint of the storytelling and the thoughts
Mm-hmm.
that I this crazy noggin up here. And it got people intrigued. So then they were like, "Oh, I really enjoy her Nessian content," or like she's quirky. It got them more interested in learning about my book, and that was kind of how it kind of developed over the year.
Very cool. And I hate to do this, but I know Luna, you have to go, and we're gonna have to wrap this up. But it sounds like a lot of what you said comes down to being authentic and authentically you while you're here on the app, and not trying to appear to be one thing or try to appease who you think the fans are. Because if you're just yourself, you're going to attract your audience, and those are the people who are going to be your core readership anyway. It's not about having one or two viral videos and getting all sorts of people who aren't going to be interested in you. Over the course of a year or 2 years, you can really, cultivate people who want to be there with you and who want to read what you have to say and who want to see you succeed, because that's important too. So I know we have some people who are still coming in, and I'm sorry we're gonna cut this one short. But I want to thank our guests. Thank you, Luna. Thank you, Corvin. I'm going to give everybody just one more minute. If you aren't following all three of us, please do. If you've enjoyed what we're talking about, then you're one of those people we were just discussing who are interested in us, and hopefully you want to learn more from us. And we really appreciate you all being here. I love seeing how many people attend these things. I've been on some other live stuff where there's 2 or 3 people, and when you're only talking to 2 or 3 people, it just isn't as fun. So thanks, everybody. Thank you to our guests, and we will see you all next week, 7 p.m. Central, here on BookTalk on BookTalk.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
All right. Take care, everyone.